What's happening, guys? My name is Grizz, and this is your complete ultimate guide to all of the carbine rifles of Battlefield 4. To those of you who have never experienced a Grizzno guide before, I'd like to say welcome to my channel. Thank you for taking an interest, and hopefully by the end of this I'll have razzled and dazzled you enough to earn a subscription. And to all the veterans, I'd like to say thank you for your patience. I've been talking about this guide for quite some time now, and I'm so happy to finally be able to bring it to you. You have no idea. So thank you so much for waiting, and I hope it'll be worth it in the end. But before we get started, I just wanted to mention a couple things about this guide. First of all, I've made a handy dandy menu for you here that should you wish to skip over any weapon or skip around to different weapons as you please, you can use this menu to easily do so. Gosh, I'm such a nice guy, eh? Second thing is about the damage statistics for this weapon. If you don't know about damage multipliers, then you should probably reevaluate your life. No, I'm just kidding. No, if you don't know what a damage multiplier is, means, or does, then you might not get the full picture on how these damage values that I'm going to be rattling off work. Crash course, hit a guy in the dome piece, your damage is multiplied by 2. Chest and arms is multiplied by 1, so it's a base value. And in the stomach and legs, you get a lovely 0.93 times multiplier, meaning your damage is lessened. Et c'est pas bon ça. Third/fourth thing is I'm going to give you guys my favorite attachments for each weapon, but I want you to know that this is all my personal opinion, and feel free to use whatever attachments you like, because I'm certainly no pro, and it all comes down to what you feel most comfortable with in the end. I'm just here to give you the cold hard facts about each weapon, give you my humble opinions on how they're best utilized. I said that twice, humble opinion. I don't know why I like that so much. Anyway, also, I'm not going to get super granular with the reviews of each weapon because this video would be way too long if I did. So in the interest of time, I'll just give you a quick overview of the weapon statistics, what it's good at, what it's bad at, and then my preferred setup. Alrighty, so I think that's really all I wanted to throw out there before we start. Oh, one more thing. This guide is for the carbines of Battlefield 4, so being that they're all kit weapons, keep in mind that you can employ all sorts of different playstyles and tactics while using these weapons. So you don't have to just listen to me and how I use them and then just copy pasta. You might be good at something I'm not, like countering side-to-side recoil. I'm terrible at it, and I'm not afraid to admit it either. So take my advice with a grain of salt and use these weapons how you like to use them. So without further ado, let's get it out! Kicking things off in style, and because I'm going alphabetically, it's the A91, one of my personal favorites.
The A91 does a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum of 15.4 and fires at a rate of 800 rounds per minute. Magazine size is 30 plus 1 in the chamber, and your reload times are 2.7 seconds for short and 3.3 seconds for the long. Muzzle velocity is 470 meters per second, and the recoil on this guy is somewhere in the medium area.
So this is your standard damage model. Most of the carbines have the exact same thing. Nothing out of the ordinary there, but that rate of fire definitely on the high end at 800, and this is partly what makes the A91 so effective in close quarters combat. But there are other key stats that help as well, first being the stability and accuracy. I put the A91 in the medium amount of recoil because it can be a little bouncy side to side. It is, however, really easy to control as is, and it's also possible to further reduce the side-to-side recoil with the proper grip and barrel attachments. My preferred setup for the A91 usually consists of a short-range red dot sight. If I'm not using a suppressor, then the other half of the time I'll use the flash hider, because the A91 seems to work best when you're going full auto Rambo mode, especially with that amazing hip fire. And I always use the stubby grip because I really don't like the hit to automatic fire accuracy you get from a compensator or muzzle. And finally, I always run a laser because, like I said, God from the hip. Overall, I really gotta give it up to the A91. Great choice for any class, any setup really, and one of my favorite weapons in the entire game. It's a shredder, so take advantage of that high rate of fire and ridiculous hip-fire accuracy. The only downside is that it does have one of the more lengthy reloads for both short and long, so just watch out for that and try to get to cover for reloads. The Ace-21 CQB is kind of like the nerdy younger brother of the Ace-23. He doesn't hit quite as hard, but he'll get you with the smarts and the sneakiness, which is kind of the approach I like to take when using this weapon. The Ace-21 does a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum damage of 15.4, firing at a rate of 770 rounds per minute. Magazine size is 35 plus 1 in the chamber for 36 total, and your reload times are 2.1 seconds for the short and 3.1 seconds for the long. Bullet velocity 440 meters per second, and I'd put the recoil somewhere in the medium category. So the reasoning behind the doesn't hit as hard comment is that minimum damage value of 15.4, much less than the Ace-23's 18, but while it would be much easier to point out all the ways the Ace-23 is superior to the 21, let's talk about how they're the same, because if you really like using the Ace-23, you will definitely enjoy this variation as well. Just takes being mindful of a couple things, I guess. The Ace-21 CQB is exactly the same as the 23 in the following ways: same max damage, same rate of fire, same reload times, and the exact same recoil pattern. This is why I think Ace-23 fans will easily transition to this weapon and will probably see similar results. But the Ace-21 can't compete with its big bro at anything more than medium range. Once you get into that medium-high area, there's a stark drop in damage and it's just not a good scene. Longer range kills are by no means impossible though. You can make it work, but you're gonna need a lot of time, a clear shot, and most likely your entire magazine, because not exactly contributing to the cause is the recoil as well, which I find pretty tough to counter. Preferred setup for myself once again is a short range optic, stubby grip, and laser. If I'm not going suppressed, I'll use the heavy barrel or the flash hider, and this is going to become a trend, as you guys will see very soon. Overall, I'd say the Ace-21 is average at best, not the worst choice you could make, but certainly not the best either. I don't really see a whole lot of reason to use this carbine, other than if you just want to mix it up a bit, or just being an Ace-23 enthusiast looking for something that feels similar on the engineer, support, and recon classes. We're keeping it in the family with the next carbine up on the chopping block, the Ace-52. This sibling is not quite as close to the main man, the Ace-23. No, the 52 definitely a lot bigger, bulkier, and slower, but my god, does it pack a punch. The Ace-52 does a maximum damage of 33 and a minimum damage of 19. Rate of fire 650 rounds per minute, and you've only got a 25 round magazine plus 1 in the chamber for 26 total. Reload times are 2.2 seconds for short and 3.1 seconds for the long. Bullet velocity is only 400 meters per second, and the recoil is, I'd say, high. Clearly the Ace-52 is the big boy. No carbine hits harder than he at 33 max damage and 19 minimum. 19! That's more than every AR save for 2, and more than most LMGs as well. No doubt about it, if you're looking for power in the carbine class, then look no further. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows with the Ace-52. In fact, I'm really not a huge fan of this weapon at all because it's quite the finicky thing and it has a steep learning curve. The recoil is high for one and the bullet velocity is low, so while it does have the power for long range, the bullet drop in speed is a detriment and you'll have to lead and arc those shots for targets on the move. Along with that, you've also got a smaller magazine at only 26 total rounds and a low fire rate, so it won't be doing you any favors in close quarters either. Reload times are basically the same, so you know, there's that.
Now, I've been talking about using this weapon a lot at range, but really, if you're the kind of person who's good at and likes to be very stealthy, then in CQB, the Ace-52 might be your best friend, just because of that high damage output. I'll usually run the Ace-52 with a short range, laser, suppressor, and the angled grip, but I've been really digging that target finder on the barrel lately.
Overall, I can't really give you my seal of approval on this weapon, guys, because I just don't like it that much personally. But I believe if you can master it, I think it has a lot of potential, and I've even heard that some pros use this weapon exclusively, so there you go. Might want to trust their word over mine. Moving on. The ACW-R is quite simply a beast and is a top contender for my overall favorite carbine to use. The ACW-R does a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum of 15.4 and fires at a rate of 880 rounds per minute. Magazine size is 30 plus 1 in the chamber for 31 total, and your reload times are 1.83 seconds for short and 2.35 seconds for long. Muzzle velocity is 500 meters per second, and the recoil is somewhere in the medium to high area. One thing is certain, there are a lot of good things about the ACW-R. Fast firing, quick reloading makes this weapon one of the most dominating in close quarters. Not only that, but the high bullet velocity of the ACW-R allows it to do just as much work at medium and longer ranges. The one real downside to the ACW-R is the recoil being on the high end. But while I do find it does kick pretty hard, the recoil pattern itself is very easy to counter and control. And further, if you've got an angled grip on there and you stick mostly to tap firing, the ACW-R can be one of the most deadly accurate weapons in the game. It continues to surprise me how fast you can drop a guy with this thing, especially if you manage to land a headshot or two. I will not be recommending any medium range optics ever go on the ACW-R. Some might disagree with that, but I always run the short range red dot. And depending on the game mode, I like to switch up a few of the other attachments. If we're talking total boss CQB setup, then I'd say go suppressed with the stubby grip and the laser. And if we're talking tactical play, I definitely recommend the angled or folding grips with a compensator. Tap fire and counter the upwards recoil a bit and you will be golden. The ACW-R undoubtedly gets the Grizno seal of approval, guys. It is either this guy or the A91 when it comes down to my favorite carbine in all of Battlefield 4. It's always going to be an excellent choice for any game mode or map because of the versatility it brings to the table, and also it'll shred a dude faster than you can say chicken poutine. And so we come to the first real groaner of the guide, the AKU-12. The AKU-12 does a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum damage of 15.4 and fires at a rate of 680 rounds per minute. Magazine size 30, plus 1 in the chamber for 31 total, and your reload times are 2.05 seconds for the short and 3 seconds for the long. Muzzle velocity is 500 meters per second, and the recoil is pretty low on this one. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, this weapon kinda sucks. I know there's always gonna be some who disagree, but I find it very difficult to find a saving grace when it comes to the AKU-12. I mean, look at that chart. Low rate of fire, long reload times, nothing too special anywhere really. The only thing I can possibly see is the bullet velocity is decently fast, so using the AKU-12 at distance is really your only option, and the low recoil further solidifies this. Doing well with the AKU-12 in close quarters is a feat. There are just so many weapons out there that will embarrass and humiliate you if you try to go mano a mano with them, so just don't. Save the AKU-12 for conquest and more tactical game modes, and keep it in the vault for domination and TDM because you're just not going to have a good time in my opinion. My preferred setup, if I even really have one at all, would be the 3.4 times optic with the angled grip to try and play to the strengths of this guy. And if you're looking to further increase this weapon's effectiveness at range, then I would recommend the heavy barrel. And I'll slap the laser sight on there if nothing else. But here's a thought as well. I've come to realize the target detector is pretty OP in the rush game mode, so if you're sitting back, the target detector can really help your team out tremendously. So try it out. Overall though, I'm not a fan of the AKU-12 either. It's way too slow for my style of play, and really I find it just doesn't have much going for it in any area. I like to use this term from time to time to describe underwhelming things, and I think it fits perfectly here once again. The AKU-12, everybody. Mashed with no gravy. Alright, nice to be back on the righteous path with the AK-5C. Let's check out why this little fella is the most well-rounded option in the carbine category. The AK-5C does a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum 15.4 and fires at a rate of 700 rounds per minute. Magazine size is 30 plus 1 in the chamber for 31 total, and your reload times are 1.85 seconds for the short and 2.35 seconds for the long. Muzzle velocity is a nice 630 meters per second, and the recoil on this guy, I'm happy to report, is very low. Before the patch, the AK-5C was probably the overall best carbine. Since the patch, it took a little hit, but I'm happy to report that it still lays them out. But it doesn't seem like the time to kill is quite the same. Having said that, I think the AK-5C is still up there in the upper echelon of carbines. Versatility is the name of the game here with this guy, as the stats clearly show how well-rounded it is. The AK-5C's stats are generally all middle of the roadish, which is why it's essentially great at everything. Close, medium, or long range, running with the AK-5C gives you the ability to compete with virtually every weapon at every range. Rate of fire is pretty good, and the reload times are excellent, so it'll hold its own in CQB. And the low recoil and high muzzle velocity makes it easy to pick off people at range as well. I struggle when it comes to finding something that is really bad about the AK-5C. The only argument I could possibly make is that I find the spread during automatic fire can be troublesome, but all you really have to do to negate this is have a little more control over your trigger finger. Tap firing the AK-5C really the way to go for anything beyond close range. In tight though, you can go ahead and mag dump if you need to, because the spread won't be as evident. My preferred setup with the AK-5C is almost always the short range red dot, angled or folding grip, laser, and the heavy barrel if I'm not using the suppressor. Although sometimes medium range optic is helpful if you're looking to be a little more conservative. But the heavy barrel does wonders for your accuracy at longer ranges and really works extremely well on the AK-5C. So to sum it all up, AK-5C, never a bad choice no matter what game mode you're playing or what tactics you are employing. This is the part of the video where Grizno gets real sad. The G36C, what did they do to you, my sweet, innocent piece of German engineering? Oh, the humanity. Alright, give it to me straight, Doc, I can take it. The G36C does a maximum damage of 24, minimum 15.4, and its rate of fire is 650 rounds per minute. Magazine size is 30 plus 1 in the chamber for 31 total, and your reload times are 2.1 seconds for the short, 2.85 seconds for the long. Muzzle velocity 650 meters per second, and the recoil is, again, somewhere in the medium area. The G36C was once one of my overall favorite weapons to use in a time known as Battlefield 3. Fast forward to Battlefield 4 and you've ruined the Cactus. Why does it suck so much, guys? I can't believe you did this to my poor baby. Okay, I'll stop now. But seriously, the BF4 G36C is terrible, and it makes me feel very sad because I used to love this weapon. It still functions and feels similar to the way it did in Battlefield 3, but it must have had a better damage model or something back then, because now, I can't say I enjoy using this weapon at all. Time to kill seems so long, and that is surely due in part to the low rate of fire. Add on to that the medium or medium-high recoil, I guess, and it just makes things very difficult. It's abysmal in close quarters, tolerable at best at medium range, and it's not great at long range. The only semi-good thing I have to say about the G36C is that the difference between the short and long reload times is almost nothing, but even that is, not something you would write home about. As for a preferred setup on this guy, I'll usually just go with my usual short-range optic laser and the angled or folding grip, as tap or burst firing, highly recommended. For the barrel, I like to swap between the heavy barrel and the flash hider, or maybe nothing at all, because I can't, in good conscience, recommend running the G36 suppressed. Kills your range, and that's really where you want to play. Charging into the fray all willy-nilly, not going to do you any favors, and you'll most likely end up full of holes like a slice of Swiss cheese. Overall, isn't much I can say about the G36C other than I recommend avoiding it. The M4 is the only carbine with no automatic fire mode. 3-round burst or single fire is all you get, but fear not, my little one. It's all good in the hood. Just look at these stats. The M4 does a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum damage of 15.4, but fires at a rate of 800 rounds per minute. Magazine size is 30 plus 1 in the chamber for 31 total, and your reload times are 1.85 seconds for the short, 2.4 seconds for long. Your muzzle velocity is 580 meters per second, and the recoil is somewhere between medium and high. If you're a fan of the burst fire weapons, then I guarantee you will fall in love with the M4. Let's do a little comparison with the other 3-round burst weapon, the M16A4, and we'll see how the M4 carbine rifle stacks up. Obviously the M4 isn't going to quite cut the mustard over the M16A4, but that's not to say that the M4 doesn't have anything going for it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The M16 does net you better minimum damage, muzzle velocity, and max distance, making it, more effective at range. Also, it reloads slightly faster for some reason. In close and medium range combat, however, the M4 and the M16A4 are essentially identical. Max damage, rate of fire, magazine size, and the recoil patterns are all the same. But here's the thing, the M4 kills the M16 in the category of bullet spread while on the move. So basically, the M4 allows for greater mobility by being more accurate when firing on the move. This is going to help a lot for corner peeking and hip firing. My preferred setup is once again the short-range optic, my laser, and then naturally the angled or folding grip to help reduce first shot recoil, as it is a burst fire weapon after all. On the barrel, mostly leave that naked or use the flash hider when not running the suppressor, but here's another weapon that does do well with the heavy barrel. Overall, the M4 is definitely a great choice amongst the carbines. You can do the work at any range, but close and medium is really where you're going to be the most effective. The M4's versatility allows you to play a variety of styles, so run with it wherever and whenever, because this guy's got your back no matter what comes your way. MTAR 21, kind of a funny looking weapon, but while the Super Soaker 21 may look like a squirt gun from my days of youth, in this neighborhood battle, I'm soaking targets with bullets. The MTAR 21 does a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum 15.4, but fires at a blistering rate of 900 rounds per minute. Magazine size is 30 plus 1 in the chamber for 31 total, and your reload times are 2.4 seconds for the short, 3 seconds for the long. Muzzle velocity is 540 meters per second, and unfortunately the recoil on this guy is a little bit high. The MTAR 21 is a skill weapon, no doubt about it. I say that because you can pick up this weapon and do generally okay at any given time, but I for one find it a little finicky, and you really have to be comfortable with the recoil to be the best you can be. It's rather high and sporadic, but if you can learn to counter it, then by golly the MTAR will be your best friend forever. An absolute shredder with that 900 RPM rate of fire, but if you just glance at the rest of the stats, one could say doesn't paint a pretty picture. However, the only real bad thing about the MTAR, aside from the recoil, is the long reload times. If you've ducked around a corner after taking out an enemy or two and you need to reload, better hope there isn't one more charging in, because 9 times out of 10, you won't get that reload completed in time, my friend. Another bad thing is the muzzle velocity. Not what you would consider excellent, but it really doesn't matter too much because long range was never the MTAR's forte. Stick to close and medium range, you won't notice that lower bullet speed at all. I like to run the MTAR 21 with the stubby grip for sure, so I can calm the spread a little bit when firing full auto, but you could use any grip you want depending on where you like to add that stability. Short range optic is the way to go if you ask me, and then the usual laser sight and suppressor to finish things off. All in all, the MTAR 21 is a beast in CQB, so never a bad choice to run with this weapon if you like to get in there and get your hands dirty. I would say stay away from using it for longer ranges, as the recoil and the bullet velocity are a huge detriment, and I just don't think it's very good beyond medium range. And now the SG-553. Do I even need to tell you guys how awesome this carbine is? Well, okay, I'm gonna tell you anyway. Let me see those stats. The SG-553 does a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum of 15.4 and fires at a rate of 830 rounds per minute. Magazine size is 30 plus 1 in the chamber for 31 total, and your reload times are 2.15 seconds for short and 2.65 seconds for the long. Muzzle velocity, 470 meters per second, and the recoil is, I'd say medium, but it's not actually too bad, so we'll say medium-low. La creme de la creme of the group when it comes to close quarters gunfights, if you ask me. Well, pretty up there anyway. It's very rare that I lose a one-on-one gunfight with the SG-553 in my hands. It just dominates. It isn't exactly the most versatile carbine though, as it does lack a bit in the bullet velocity area, but that's okay because once again, close and medium range is the butter zone for the SG-553. The high rate of fire and low bullet spread lends a very helpful hand here, and I'd say that the recoil low to medium and very controllable, so if you want you can play a little more conservatively and try to keep your gunfights to a bit longer range, but again, if you ask me, the SG-553 isn't the best choice for that kind of playstyle, only because your shots will need to have a pretty good lead on them if you're going after a moving target. And if you really like to hang back, there are much better options out there for you, such as the AK-5C or even the ACW-R. But for close quarters, rush, domination, TDM, it's an excellent choice. You can go full auto and you don't have to worry too much about tap firing and being super in control of your trigger finger at all times. Mag dumping is fully possible even at medium ranges, and with that high rate of fire, enemies are done in no time. Preferred setup isn't much of a derivative from the trend. Short range optic, stubby grip, laser sight, and the suppressor is my go-to barrel attachment to keep me off that enemy radar. Gotta give it up to the SG-553 for being one of the best carbines in CQB, but there definitely are more versatile options for you if you need that. But man, for those close quarters game modes, rush, and really any map that has tight spaces in it, the SG-553 is amazing, and I promise you will be shredding dudes like it's nobody's business. And so we've come to the final carbine of the guide, the Type 95B1. I kinda wish this weapon was burst fire only like the M4, only because I think it would bring back a little bit of Modern Warfare 3 nostalgia for me. I used to use that weapon so much in that game. But it's not quite the same, what can you do? At least it looks similar. The 95B1 does a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum damage of 15.4 and fires at a rate of 650 rounds per minute. Magazine size is 30 plus 1 in the chamber for 31 total, and your reload times are 2.75 seconds for the short and 3.4 seconds for the long. Muzzle velocity is 540 meters per second, and the recoil on this guy is nice and low. This weapon is what I like to call a sleeper. I don't see many people out there using the 95B, so for that reason, I'm gonna label him as misunderstood. I wasn't too thrilled about going for gameplay with this weapon at first, but after I got going with it and had a game or two under my belt, I very quickly changed my tune. And I don't know what it is exactly, because looking at that stat chart, it looks like this thing should just be absolutely terrible. But maybe it's the combination of all the mediocre stats that makes this weapon somewhat special. It's super controllable with very low recoil, and the accuracy on this thing is incredible. In fact, right here I was playing with it and I decided to try out the single fire mode for longer ranges. It works so well, I was almost in disbelief. Like, how am I doing so well with the Type 95 on single fire mode? It just didn't make any sense to me at the time. I was almost gonna say that the Type 95 is kinda like a DMR with a bigger magazine and a full auto option, but that wouldn't be entirely accurate. It doesn't have quite the muzzle velocity to be able to make that comparison, I guess. Still, you could say that it kind of feels like you've got a slightly weaker DMR in your pocket whenever you need it. Now, I can't say this is my preferred setup, but I found that the medium range optic, angled folding grip, laser sight, and a muzzle brake worked out really well as a setup for the Type 95, but a short range optic is just as good if you prefer that, and also, instead of running the laser, if you've got that medium range optic, you could opt for the candid iron sights as well. To sum it all up, the Type 95 is a bit underrated, and if you're looking for an engineer weapon that'll give you a good range without resorting to the DMR, then this just might be what you're looking for. Well guys, it's been a slice, but we've come to the end of my guide to all of the carbines of Battlefield 4. I do so hope you enjoyed all my reviews, my opinions, and my suggestions. Before we go, let's rank all the carbines I talked about today in a nice, concise little list here. And of course, this is my list, so take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I figured I'd show you all how I would rank the carbines, and hopefully that'll at least give you a good idea of which ones are the obviously good ones and which ones are the obviously bad ones. So my ranking of the carbines goes like this. At the bottom of the list, I'm gonna stick the G36C there, as much as it pains me to do so. It really isn't a good weapon in my eyes, so that's why it's at the bottom. Next comes the AKU-12. Really don't like this carbine that much either, for the aforementioned reasons. Ace-52 and the Ace-21 come next, followed by the MTAR-21. And now we're getting into the tricky part, because the rest of the carbines are all what I would consider pretty good. So next up on the list, I'd put the Type 95, M4, then the SG-553, and that brings us to the top three. And really, I could put these in any order at all because I love all three of them, but I'll say the AK-5C number 3, ACW-R at number 2, and the winner, and still, carbine champion of the world, the A91! Give it up for our winner, everybody! Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed my opinions and suggestions, everybody. Please leave a comment down below if you feel differently about anything I said, and we'll have a little discussion about it, yeah? I'm definitely not a professional Battlefield player, like I said, and some people probably think I'm crazy for ranking the Type 95 over the MTAR, but it's just how I felt. So I'm always open to new ideas, criticisms, and feedback, so let me know what you all thought of my reviews. But that's gonna wrap things up for me, friend Grizno, and if you enjoyed the video, would like to show it a little love, you can always do so by clicking that like button down below, sharing the video with your friends who you think might also enjoy a complete carbine guide, or by just letting me know you appreciated all my hard work in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, and thank you to all my subscribers for your continued support. I love ya. Toodles.